So we're going to start with the 1 point. Now I'm going to leave my project settings where they're at because each one of these assets are at different frame length and different resolutions. So we'll just need to be aware of that when we're working. But I am going to go ahead and read in the 1 point track. Now you're going to notice within the 1 point track folder, you have soft smoke and MOV. Let's go ahead and import that. That's what we're going to be using as our visual effects asset. And then I'm also going to read in the London Eye image sequence right here. So you'll see it in the London Eye folder. Just click here and you'll see the image sequence. If you see each frame like this, you just need to make sure that sequences is checked on, so it imports it as a sequence. Then go ahead and hit open. You'll notice my timeline defaults to 1 through whatever my project settings set to. It looks like 300. But down here at the bottom, I want you guys to look. In your viewer, you see where it says global? We're going to set this to input. And basically that means whatever read node we load into the viewer, it will set our timeline to that frame length. All right, since these are going to all be at different frame lengths, we need to make sure that we leave this on input. I'm going to go ahead and set my viewer to bounce. I'm going to go to full screen, hit H on the keyboard to maximize it, and then hit L to play it. First thing you want to do is take a look at your footage, assess what you need to do for the footage, okay? Now, this particular shot, you can tell it's a pan, all right? It's a camera on a tripod that's just kind of panning from left to right. And you know that because you don't really see any parallax within the shot. So you don't see any distance between, in this case, the London Eye and say this building in the background. If the camera were moving, you'd see kind of depth between these areas, but you don't. So that tells me that I can I can get away with this track with a 1 point track. Now, what are we tracking? Well, what we're going to do, we're going to track one of these chimneys and apply our smoke to it. Now, I know these aren't technically chimneys, but we're just going to pretend that they're chimneys. So we're going to track this one, all right, through the sequence, and then apply that tracking data to that soft smoke. And that'll be our easiest 1 point track kind of 101 here, all right? So let's go ahead and create a tracker. Now, the tracker is actually located in the transform group. So if you guys use the groups, it's going to be in this group off to the left. You'll find it down here at the bottom, tracker. Of course, you could tab it in if you just want to hit the tab key and type in tracker. There's no quick key for it, at least not by default. So what you notice immediately with the tracker is that as soon as you create the properties are up in the properties panel or the properties pane, you see all these new buttons pop up at the top of your viewer. All right, so if I close my properties, you see they disappear, double click the tracker, they reappear. Now, this is so you can do the majority of your work within the viewer when you're in full screen. So you don't necessarily need to come over here and mess with anything, at least not initially. Let's go ahead and go to full screen. Make sure you have your trackers properties up so you can see all the options in the viewer. Now, there's two different ways we can create a tracker. We can do it the slow way, or we can do it the much faster, quicker, easier way. So let me show you the slow way. If you guys go all the way to the top left of your viewer, all the way to the left, you're going to see this little button that says Add Tracks. If you click it, it turns red. And then you can just start adding in trackers wherever you want it on the image. You can add as many of them as you want. Just keep kind of adding these in. And then when you're done, you just turn the button off. So here's the quicker way to do it. Wherever you want to add a tracker, just hold down Option Command. When you hold down Option Command, notice the button turns red. And then when you let go, it goes back to being off. I want to apply a tracker to this area here, Option Command, and click. Bam, done, right? That's the quicker, easier way to add tracks. And you can keep holding down Option Command and clicking to add tracks. All right, so we created our first tracker. All right, so let's kind of go over what these two little boxes up here at the top mean. All right, well, this box here is like a zoomed in kind of area of your pattern, and you can scale this box up or down. And this is for fine tuning where your tracker is tracking. So you can kind of come in here and really line it up where you want it. Now, this next little smaller box to the right of it is actually your keyframe. Whenever you add a keyframe or whenever you place a track on a particular frame, it adds a keyframe on that frame as its starting point. As you add more keyframes, manual keyframes, you'll notice you'll get more and more of these boxes popping up, all right? So let's actually go in the viewer and look at our pattern and search region, right? You guys remember the search region is where it searches for this pattern that it's seeing inside this inner box here. So a couple things I'm gonna do. I wanna make my pattern region a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna grab the bottom right corner. I'm gonna drag it up till I hit this kind of corner of the building right here. And the reason why is because I want, again, I want a very specific looking pattern that I know the tracker can attach itself to and track throughout the sequence. So you want as much detail and as much variation in color in your patterns when you do your tracking. So if you look at this, I mean, what we're looking at essentially is you see we have dark here in the center. We have gray here with a lighter gray with white with this dark kind of black in the corner, right? That's a specific enough pattern that H should be able to track throughout the sequence. Now that I have my pattern kind of set where I want, now I'm going to increase my search region just a little bit. I'm going to make it a little bit larger, something like this. And a good rule of thumb on how big your search region needs to be is if you go to the next frame, just the right arrow key, and your pattern is still well within the search region, then your search region is big enough. Now, we're about to track, and we're gonna kind of cross our fingers here and hope that it tracks all the way to the end. If Nuke loses the pattern, or if it feels like it's falling below a threshold to where it feels like it's not tracking the pattern properly anymore, it will just stop. And we're gonna track through to the end here and see if we can't get a good track off our first try. You don't wanna use these transport controls down here at the bottom. In fact, if I hit play, it does nothing. You want to use the ones here up at the top. This is for tracking your tracker here. So I'm going to hit the play button, which is track to end. I'm going to make sure I'm on frame 1 and track to the end and watch what it does. All right, so it got most of that and tracked all the way through. You'll notice now that you have a keyframe on every frame. That's why every frame is highlighted blue at the bottom. And each one of these little dots represents an XY coordinate on that particular frame, where that pattern is. All right, notice how it has a little bob to it, right? Because we are rotating, but we're rotating on a boat. And the boat was bobbing up and down as we were kind of rotating our camera. Okay, so here's the next step. And this is something that you always want to do. You always want to check your tracker and make sure that it's following the pattern. So this is what you want to do. Take your little preview region, make it super large. You really want to watch this and make sure that your tracker is staying stuck on this area of the frame. So I'm just going to grab my playhead and just kind of scrub through and check and make sure my tracker is staying in position. But it's stuck pretty well on the chimney. Now yours should say stuck. If it looks like it's sliding or moving around, then we need to fix it. Okay, so let me show you the next couple steps. Don't necessarily do it, just watch me do it, and then we'll do it all together, okay? Because there's two different ways you can use this tracking data, all right? Let's say you were done with this tracker. You know you aren't going to use it again, okay? You can use the tracker itself as the tracking data. So first thing I need to do is take my smoke and add a transformation to it and go ahead and get it positioned where I want it in the frame. This is before I apply the tracking, all right? So what I'm going to do is create a merge. I'm just going to merge our smoke on top of the plate and load it in the viewer here. Now you're going to notice the pivot or anchor point is right in the center of my smoke, right? But I can move the pivot, hold down command, and I can move my pivot to the bottom of the smoke. And this will make it easier to line up in place. So I'm going to say, okay, let's line it up here. And then I can interactively scale tool here. I want you guys to notice my cursor. As soon as I move outside the circle, it'll switch to that. See, when it switches to that, now I'm in scale. So you click and you can just drag it down to something that looks a little bit more, matches the size, okay? So we've got our smoke. Again, no tracking data on it. So if I play, it just looks like that. No good. Here's what I was saying earlier. If you're done with this tracker, you can disconnect it. And I can just place it right underneath this transform of the smoke. And with this tracker, I can go into its transform tab and set its transformation to match move because I'm matching the movement that's in the background plate. Go ahead and click that. Now that it's set to match move, if I close all this, you'll notice that we have the smoke tracked in. Now, that's one way to do it. A preferred way is to set it up like this, where we actually export the tracking data from the tracker in its own transformation node. So this is how we're going to do it. What we're going to do is take our tracker and we're going to highlight the track that we want to export. And then down here at the bottom, we're going to export transform match move. Go ahead and hit create. And you notice this gives you your own transformation tracking with the tracking data. You can plug it in here. And then if I play through it, right, we have the smoke tracked in just like that. Another thing I could do to this if I needed to, which is great with this transform, is add in motion blur. All right, so I can turn the motion blur on. And so now when it's moving, you'll get a bit of blur happening to the smoke, which if it's off, there it is off, and there it is set to 1 to match the motion blur of the background. Let me do the transform match move. I'm going to create that one first so you guys can see it. This is the transform match move, and this is the transform match move baked to the right. All right, so I want you guys to notice these chips that are on the node because these chips tell you something about the node. You notice the regular match move has this little E in green expression, all right? Basically what this means is that there's no data on this particular node. It's just following the data that's from the tracker. So in this case, you can think of this as the child to the tracker, which is the parent. In fact, if I do this, expression arrows on, you can see the expression and the direction it's going. Now, baked, if you notice, you don't have that little E expression, but you have this little A. So what this means is that the data from the tracker has been copied or baked onto this transformation node. So it's not following the tracker, it's got the data on the node. So the benefit to this one would be if I delete this tracker, I still got my tracking data here. If I were to delete my tracker, this one would not work because it's just following this. It wouldn't know what to do. Now, the one benefit to using the one that's based off an expression is, let's say I need to go back to my tracker and update it. Maybe I notice it's drifting or sliding. If I update my tracker, this is automatically going to update as well with it. This one, it's not going to update. The data is baked on. It is what it is. So you guys use whichever one to use. Usually use the expression-based ones just for the fact that I don't delete my tracker nodes. And if I ever need to come back and refine, I don't have to replace these nodes. They'll automatically update. So go ahead and take your match move, whichever one you created, and place it under the transform. And when you play through it, I'm going to close all my properties. You'll see that you have your smoke stuck right on the chimney. That's basic point tracking 101. Now, the one thing I want you guys to pay attention to is the bounding box. See what's happening with the bounding box? Because of the smoke that's going off screen, see how we have all this stuff kind of coming off past our viewer? This is wasted data that Nuke is processing. Even though it's going beyond the viewer, Nuke is still calculating this data, right? So we just need to kind of clean this up, and we can do this in the merge. You notice the merge is telling me, by the way, that's what this little red box around the merge means. It means that your bounding box is going beyond what your viewer is displaying. So in the merge node, you'll see right under operation, it says set B box to, that's bounding box. And right now it's a union, so it's just adding A and B together. But I want to use the bounding box not from A, but from B. So I'm going to switch it to B. Notice it gets rid of all that extra data. All right, so let's take this right here, what we have. I want you guys to left drag select all of it and tab in a backdrop node and make this backdrop node. I want you to call it 1 point. All right, and then once you have this, I want you guys to hit Command S and save your script.